Good morning. Let me catch my breath. Our November theme is spirituality motivated moral leadership, spiritual guidance. Today our topic is leading from the heart. In the Science of Mind text, page 43, Ernest Holmes wrote, "Do we teach our children to follow the steps of a Caesar or a Napoleon? Or do we teach them the story of Jesus or Buddha? We teach them that love masters everything." In the Tao of Leadership, John Heider writes, "Enlightened leadership is service, not selfishness. The leader grows more and lasts longer by placing the well-being of all above the well-being of self alone. Paradox, by being selfless, the leader enhances self." And Reverend Dr. Michael Beckwith wrote, "We are on the planet to be and express the divine love of God that is alive in every fiber of our being, waiting to be released through us onto our world. Living as love is a way of life that brings heaven on earth." So, let us affirm together with power, conscious of my union with God, the universal love intelligence, I'm guided into actless, selfless service for the highest well-being of all, placing the well-being of all above the well-being of myself alone. I grow in love, peace, power, and well-being. I stand for spiritually motivated moral leadership. Yes. Thank you so much, Jen.
A lot of heart in the way that you read that. So this month, looking at this concept of spiritually motivated moral leadership, I wanted just to bring the rest of you who haven't been here along with where we are on this, because when we talk about leadership, I think it's really important to realize that we all are in that role at one time or another. We're in that role when we are taking the lead in a conversation, when we are parenting, when we are sharing our creative expression with the world. We're taking leadership, and and then all the other myriad of ways that we normally think of being a leader. When we're in service to others, when if we're a caregiver, if we're a therapist. Those are all leadership roles, aren't they? And so it's important for us to realize, look at this from that broader standpoint when we're talking about spiritually motivated moral leadership. It's about a way of being, a way of showing up in the world that truly brings heaven on earth, truly allows that realization of heaven on earth to be continually showing up in our lives. So today, I thought I would focus a little bit more closely on what it means to be one who leads from the heart, one who leads from a place of morality. And I'm going to be talking about this thing called morality because I realize that can be a little jarring for people when they hear the word morality, but I'm trusting that by the time I'm done today, we'll have a different viewpoint of it. I want to start with a story. And this is a story that's told by Tom Spalding, who wrote a book called Heart-Led Leadership. He said, "Character is a trait of heart-led leadership. I first learned of the importance of character in Boy Scout camp. The Scoutmasters chose one scout at the end of summer camp to receive the Most Outstanding Scout Award. It was a high honor given to one scout who demonstrated great leadership skills. I wanted to win this award more than anything. That week, I worked harder than any of the other scouts. I got up early. I volunteered for everything. I earned more merit badges, and I did whatever the scout masters asked of me. At the end of camp, we had a huge campfire celebration. At the end of the evening, it was time for the Most Outstanding Scout Award. So I was certain would win, and I was ready to stand up and claim it. When suddenly, they did not call my name. They called the name of Greg Brown. The following morning, I came across one of the scout masters. Tell me about Greg Brown. Why did he win the Most Outstanding Scout Award? And then the master told me something that I will never forget. He told me that indeed I did work harder than any other scout and I earned more merit badges. But Greg Brown won the award because he demonstrated leadership when nobody was looking. You see, Tommy, the scoutmaster continued, the other scoutmasters and I cut down a large tree branch and placed it across the path between your campsite and the cafeteria. We hid in the woods and watched you and all the other scouts walk to lunch while climbing over the tree. But Greg Brown missed lunch that day. He went back to the camp, found a saw, and personally removed the branch. Tommy boy, when we were looking, you did all the things right, all the right things. But leadership is about character, and character is what you do when nobody is looking. I decided that day that I wanted to become more like Greg Brown. So I just thought that was such a beautiful story to start this whole concept out about what it means to be heart-centered, to lead from the heart, to lead from a place of love. And also to tie that into this idea of what does moral mean in its purest sense. So the first thing I want to do is to talk a little about this thing called love. Love, the glue that holds the universe together, it's been called. The very nature of the divine, which means it's the nature of all of us. Our nature is inherently love. It may get covered up with false beliefs and not show up that way, but that's our nature. And I love the way Carol Anderson describes it in A Co-Creator's Handbook. She said, love is the magnetic energy of the universe. And over the billions of years as the universe has been forming, love has been the thing that has glued atom to atom and molecule to molecule, or attracted, however you want to look at it, and human to human, cell to cell, human to human. And in this time, in this particular time that we are in, it's about collaboration and cooperation. We're talking about something that is truly centered in the principle of love. Self-actualization itself happens much more quickly and powerfully in a field of love, a resonant field of love. And when we join genius to genius, think of it, when we join our various, we as individualized expressions of God create the genius of the universe, uniquely expressed as each one of us. And when we join genius to genius for a greater purpose, for the betterment of all, then magic, miracles begin to happen in our lives and in the lives of others. So this new part of the evolutionary process. It used to be rugged individualism was the big thing, when people came to this country. But what we're learning is that we really thrive more fully when we are in a resonant field of love with community. So breathe that in. It's such a wonderful thing to realize. And so this idea then of spiritually motivated moral leadership has a different connotation from where we are now at this stage of evolution. I looked up the definition of moral in the online, in the so-called dictionary online, and listen to what it says. It says what societies sanction as right and acceptable. Now, here's the thing. Yes, there are societies or spiritual traditions that have things like, the Buddhists have the Eight Noble Truths, which are really guidelines for morality. And the Christians have the Ten Commandments. And I believe that each and every tradition has their code of conduct, their code of ethics that guide the morality of their people. But what happens when societies sanction things as right and acceptable that are not for the highest and best of an individual? And we know what this means, right? It's when things are considered not right and acceptable to the society, but that are inherent in the person. Or let's say it's a religious beliefs. Maybe considering anybody who's different from us is immoral. Can be the way that it goes. So the thing about this living in this time in this age and the awakening that's taking place is we're realizing that we have to do this thing called morality differently. And I looked in the Science of Mind textbook, and Ernest Holmes does not use the word moral once. I looked to see if I could find it. He doesn't. And you know why? Because the principle is there's love and law. Love leads the way, and law makes the way possible. We're talking about spiritual law. Love leads the way, and law makes the way possible. So, morality in this sense, then, the purest sense, is being led by love. And that is an inside job. That is about going within, because every situation is different. And sometimes if you're in a leadership position, people have conflicting ideas. They have one person has this idea and one person has that idea. But what it means then is it means being open to listening and having dialogue and discovering if there's a way we can come to a win-win solution, or if there's a way that we can come to consensus is even better, a consensus decision where everybody feels good about what's happening. So in leadership then, it's about going within. It's about listening to one's inner guidance and tapping into the question, what would love do in this situation? What would love do? Because when we do that, we realize that things are not always cut and dry. I mean, I think about people who have been persecuted in the past, now it's acceptable. People with different religions, people of different sexual orientation, and on and on and on. We could think of a lot of different things. And yet we know that as we evolve in consciousness, and this is what Ernest Holmes realized, is if we do our spiritual practice, what happens is we begin to remove the layers of falsehood, the conditioning, the social conditioning that we've had that's maybe led us astray as to what is truly moral in the purest sense of the word. And we begin to discover when we go within and ask, what would love do? that there is a higher truth that we can tap into that can guide our decision making. So, because we understand that the divine is within us, that the voice of God is within us, that we have spiritual guidance available to us within, it's about cultivating the consciousness of oneness, the higher vibrational frequencies of love, peace, joy, appreciation, gratitude, and so on. These character traits that we're talking about when we're talking about spiritually motivated moral leadership. When we develop these traits consciously in ourselves, then we can rely on that guidance of what is the right and good thing to do. And I think about some of the great leaders of all time, Gandhi. The society that he was in sanctioned things that he felt were completely wrong, and he stood up to it. He led the marches for, I know there were things related to the salt taxes and um, to to the makings of fabric that made it very expensive for the people to buy fabric that they made themselves. And there were all kinds of things that were unjust. Whenever social justice is a question, even though it's sanctioned by society or by the particular country or culture that you're in, doesn't mean that it's right. And that's why it's important for us to learn to rely on inner guidance and then to stand up for what is right and good and true and beautiful. And that supports all individuals, not just a few. So, spiritually motivated moral leadership. I'd like to read a quote to you that about this. That it's by Rabindranath Tagore. He's a Hindu, and he says, "Love is the reality. It is not a mere emotion. It is the great truth that lies behind all of creation." It's a beautiful quote, isn't it? And also, it's a reminder to me that love is the creative power itself. It is. It's. When we think about love, yes, it is a feeling. It is also an action. And Ernest Holmes says that it's the feeling behind the thought that is creative. It's the feeling behind the thought. If love is the impulse behind our thoughts, behind our visions, behind our dreams, then what we create is good and very good. The other thing that Ernest Holmes reminds us is that if realizing your dreams is harmful to no one, so it's something to check. Am I doing something that's harmful? Well, maybe that's not the highest and best direction. But if it's harmful to no one and it's something that you love, then it's good. It's going to bless others in one way or another. So with all of that in mind, I would like us to just listen to a couple of examples that Tom Spalding gave in his book of spirit-led or moral leadership or heart-led leadership. We're talking about the same thing here. This is a story about Frank DeAngelis, who came into the high school as the principal, and he guided the high school that was in shock from experiencing mass shootings. And he used heart-led leadership principles to overcome the tragedy and transform the school's culture into love, hope, and promise. It's a beautiful story. There's another one about Warden Burl Cain, who took the largest, most dangerous, maximum security prison in America and changed it using heart-led leadership. into a place so safe that in-prison assaults dropped 70% in 15 years. And inmates serving life sentences without parole now sell popcorn and cotton candy to kids at the prison's annual rodeo. So inspiring what can happen when the heart is activated, when the heart is leading. Isn't it? To me, it is so moving. Lao Tzu, who is the founder of Taoism, this goes back to the 6th century BC. He said, "One who loves all the world as if it were his own flesh and blood can be relied upon to lead an empire." So leading from the heart then is leading from internal wisdom, spiritual guidance. That really is the value that we've been talking about this month. It's learning to turn within. It's learning to cultivate that consciousness of oneness, compassion, and love, so that when we do make decisions, that they come from that higher place. And so then our actions are grounded in principle, in ethics, and in morals of the purest sense. So let's turn within and just give thanks for this opportunity to examine this thing called morality, this thing called heart-led leadership. Realizing that everything we could ever need or desire is right there within us the whole time. Because why? We're made in the likeness and image of the Most High. We're made in the likeness and image of love itself. Intelligence, love intelligence itself, which is the nature of the one source, the one life, the one presence. And so I know that as we each make a deeper commitment to going within for guidance before we make big decisions, for going within for guidance before we do anything that requires decision-making powers, qualities. And realizing that as we do this, as we cultivate this habit of turning within, that we are truly going to see a difference in our lives, because it means that we are living from the heart. We are living from love. And love is how we co-create heaven on earth. And I know we are doing that each and every day. I'm so grateful for this knowing. I'm so grateful for all who came here today to explore this thing called heart-led leadership, this thing called morality in its purest form. And I give my thanks for the ways in which we continue to evolve and to grow in consciousness, in love, in compassion, in service, in realizing that when we are in service to the greater good, we're also supporting ourselves because we're all one. And so I give my thanks for this knowing. I release this word into the universal law of mind, and I invite us all together to say, yes, and so it is.